found me. This is Ominously Positive, the podcast where you and I discuss very dark topics with an upbeat tone. I am your host, Merriweather. Most people call me MW, and for the sake of transparency and so people don't come along and bully me in a little bit, I have OCD and I am autistic. Also, in news, I have a broken tooth, which is painful to be talking right now because it is so sharp, it's cutting my tongue a little bit every time I speak. So, I actually chose a very short case for this podcast so that I won't have to be talking so long and won't have to be injuring my mouth while I do it. Good news. I should be getting my tooth fixed by the end of this month. I did finally get to the dentist. Apparently, dentistry is a hot commodity right now, and getting into them has been very difficult. I don't know if you were there for the saga on Twitter, but I ended up getting a very creepy dentist. I know dentists are already creepy, but doubling down, I got a really creepy dentist. When I went in right after I broke my tooth. And the place was really dirty. And they were not wearing masks. Nobody was wearing masks in there. And when I got in there, they were like, hey, you should take your mask off. You need to take your mask off. Nobody's wearing masks. So I felt really uncomfortable, and because I'm a bit of an autistic, I was like, okay, and I took off my mask. I probably shouldn't have. I probably should have just walked right out of the building. But I didn't listen to my, inner self. Anyway, while we were there, I think the dentist saw my husband in his work uniform. It's not like a military or anything like that, but it is a type of uniform. It looks pretty neat. I don't really want to say what he does or anything, but yeah, it's not law enforcement or anything like that. So, but he did look kind of official and very nice in his uniform, as he always does. And I think the dentist there saw that and assumed that we had a lot of money. We don't. And started trying to come up with reasons to bill me extra. Like he wanted to get fancy x-rays, even though that wasn't really needed. He wanted to do unnecessary dental procedures, and the cherry on top of the cake was while he was looking at my tooth and he had his fingers in my mouth, he very quietly leaned down closer to my ear and said, "So what is it that you do for a living?" And I was kind of like, okay, maybe he's just hard of hearing or something, because I know my husband is. But no, I said, oh, I'm a housewife. And he said, oh. He said it just like that. He was like, oh, you look like you would be a good housewife. And I was just like, what? What did you just say to me? And I'm looking over at my husband, who is oblivious. Of course he's oblivious. And he's just staring into his cell phone like there's nothing else going on around him. And I was kind of like, husband, this is exactly why I bring you places. You're supposed to be my human that protects me from things like this. And I'm looking at him like, dude. He didn't even notice. He didn't have any clue until we left. And I was like, hello? That guy was creepy. Well, at first he was like, how is that creepy? And I was like, okay, come on. Imagine it. You're in a dentist chair. This guy's got his fingers in his mouth. And he practically whispers in your ear that. And how would you feel? And then he was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's creepy. So we got a new dentist. This dentist is not creepy. And I'll be getting the tooth fixed. Anyways, sorry. That was a 5-minute story about me talking about a creepy dentist. I hope you enjoy. Let's actually talk about what we're here for today, though. So I picked a shorter case. It's about Monique LaSuer. I am so apologetic for butchering the names. I know I am. She has this beautiful name, and I'm probably just making a mess of it. So I'm very sorry. Her case has not been talked about in social media. I have found a few cold case blogs, but only a couple, and it was only a brief mention of her. There's no videos or anything really, and I don't understand because the case isn't that old. It's cold, but not that old. It's 2000's or so. Or 2000's, I shouldn't say or so. It just is. It's from the 2000's. And so I really just don't understand why she's not being talked about. So that's what we'll do today. We'll talk about her. And we'll get into the details of the case. Because, as usual, I did a deep dive. So here we go. Monique LaSuer. Her last name is LASUER. And I am probably making a mess out of the pronunciation of her beautiful name. So I apologize in advance for that. Monique has no known aliases that I could find, but her name is often misspelled, and there are actually two other cases. One is Monique LaSuer, which is spelt with an E instead of an A, and a Melissa La or LaSuer. And both of these tend to get mixed up into this case because the names are so darn similar. And I believe those other cases don't have that much social media as well. I've also seen people add an E to her middle name, Ann. So it would be like ANNE. And then Google just loves to correct this name, and it usually corrects it to the LE version of it. So just keep this in mind if you're going to do some research on Monique. Also, I usually just give people warnings. If you're going to research cases, I try to give people heads up so they don't see like graphic photos or anything like that. In this case, there's nothing. So if you go to research, there's no scary photos or anything like that. So Monique was born April 21st, 1974, to her mother, Gail LaSuer, in La Mesa, San Diego County, California. Monique died August 30th in 2000 in Colorado Springs, Colorado, at the age of 26 years old. And then she was laid to rest in the Fairview Cemetery, which is also in Colorado Springs. If you want to, I highly encourage you guys to check out her virtual Find a Grave site and maybe leave her some flowers. It's really mostly for her mother and her family because I think that might make them happy. But I don't know for sure. But I don't know. I just thought it would be a nice idea. So I'm just mentioning it. Okay. Monique is also survived by her aunt and uncle of Black Forest. I believe one of the uncles' name is John Askew, but I'm not for sure if that's a separate uncle from that aunt and uncle or not. Her mother and then her sister, Stephanie LaSuer, and then a bunch of cousins. So Gail, Monique's mother, advocates for her pretty often. I feel like I saw a few news articles with her in it. You can actually find a picture of Gail online holding a purple teddy bear that's made out of one of her daughter's shirts. And Gail, she used to release balloons every year in honor of her daughter. She did that for about 2 years. But then in 2003, she switched it up and she started collecting stuffed animals and donating them to Memorial Hospital in Colorado. And she did that for the children there, and each bear had a note dedicated to her daughter on it. She said it was a way to honor Monique's love for animals and protect the environment just the way she would have wanted it. Gail loves to read mysteries, but she only reads ones with very good endings, just so that she can avoid thinking about her daughter's unsolved case. And she is also a part of the group Mothers of Murdered Youth, or Mommy for short, Momy. Monique's sister is younger, but only by 1 year, I think. And she is torn that she cannot share her life with Monique anymore. They used to do a lot of traveling together. I believe they went and saw Disneyland and Magic Mountain, maybe even Las Vegas. And I have this really intense quote from her that I'd like you to hear. Quote, "I want to tell her what's going on in my life, and I can't," she said. "Some days I sit in my room and I cry. I cry that I want my sister." Unquote. And that was from an article in the news. Monique is often very described as a super sweet, very nice, and lovely person. I feel like it was pretty easy to see that Monique was ambitious and that she really wasn't afraid of working very hard to pursue her dreams. She wanted to achieve a degree in veterinary sciences. Before moving to Colorado, Monique actually worked as an oceanographic in... Wow, I am butchering that. Monique worked as an oceanographic... Wow! Okay. She worked in an oceanographic laboratory. Wow, that's the best pronunciation I can give you for this. It sounds fancy. In Colorado, she also started out working in a veterinary clinic, but then she had to switch to the Palmer House Hotel so that she could go to college classes in the daytime. Monique was 5'4". So, oh wow, so she's actually pretty short. I'm 5'6", I think. So, short girl, but that's okay. 140 pounds with brown hair and brown eyes. She was Caucasian, female, and no identifying marks. She has a lot of really beautiful photos that have been uploaded by her family on the Find a Grave site in the photo section. So if you want to check those out, I encourage that. Okay, so let's dig into the story about what happened to her now that you know a little bit about her and her family. So Monique moved to Colorado from San Diego in April of 2000, and she did it to just be close to her family who had already moved to Colorado. The family group had moved there several years prior to escape violence in Los Angeles. LaSuer's cousin had been the first to move there right after 1992 because of the Los Angeles riots. Monique rented a duplex near Fort Carson on Fairway South near B Street. I did see a news source that called this Stratton Meadows, but I could not find any Stratton Meadows when I Googled it. So I think if you go to look at the maps and you find the Fairway Street, I think you can see like this little cul-de-sac of brick buildings that kind of look like duplexes. I think that's where she was renting her house. But she rented her duplex there with her boyfriend who had only moved in 3 weeks prior. And she lived there with her 2 cats and her 2 dogs. One of the cats, Bubba, was a big black and white cat, and I guess he was a gift to Monique on her 17th or 16th birthday. He ended up moving in with one of her family members after the murder. I do not know what happened to her other pets. So Monique had only been working at the hotel for a few weeks to possibly 3 months. I did find conflicting info on that, so I just put both of the time frames. And she had switched from working in a Colorado vet clinic to the hotel, like I said, for the college classes in the day. She hadn't worked there very long, but she was already making a ton of friends with her coworkers. Monique was working August 29th. That's a Tuesday in 2000, and in the early morning of August 30th, the Wednesday. So the shift was supposed to be between 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And this was also right before Labor Day weekend. I could not find any historical weather for this time, so I usually try to include that, but I didn't find any this time. Sorry. Her job, I couldn't find a solid title for what exactly she was doing, but her job is reported as like a night hotel auditor, a night clerk, a bookkeeper, and things like that. She was at the Best Western Palmer House in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Sometimes just called the Palmer House, and it was on 3010 North Chestnut Street, and it was considered downtown by the locals. The hotel no longer exists, as it's been torn down in favor of other developmental buildings, but you can check out what it used to look like by just Googling it. The Palmer House in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and you can see it's kind of a unique looking hotel. Monique spoke on the phone to a co-worker about 1:15 a.m. according to the motel owner, Dick Sontag. I'm going to give you a quote from him. Quote, "The last time anyone talked to her was on the phone," he said. "She indicated that she was locking the doors." Unquote. This is from the Daily Gazette, from the Cold Case Files article. Then at 5 a.m., the general manager, Brian Vanderford, called to check in as usual on her, but got no answer. He just assumed that she had been in the restroom at the time and didn't think anything of this. 30 minutes to 1 hour later, I got conflicting sources on that info as well, so I just put the two time frames. A maintenance worker reporting to work found Monique in the kitchen with the doors locked. Oftentimes, it's reported that her body was found just near the main office building, and it just leaves out the other details about the kitchens and the locks out. It was policy that the employees were to lock the doors after the after the bar was closed, which was about 10 p.m. The way they were wording this in the article, I kind of feel like there was a bar in the hotel, but I'm not for sure if they meant like a bar in the hotel or just bars and restaurants in general. So that's interesting. I suppose that might be something we could Google to see what actually was inside that building. I didn't really do a lot of in-depth of what the building was like. I probably should have, come to think of it. Maybe that'll be in our Afterthoughts episode. If there's enough stuff to do in Afterthoughts on this one. Also, I do believe I kind of looked into a few of these people, like Brian Vanderford and Dick Sontag, and I think, now take this with a grain of salt, this is downstairs info, but I believe Brian Vanderford was a maintenance worker, so I wonder if it wasn't him that found Monique, which I find interesting. Just a small note there. You can take it how you will. I am not accusing anybody of anything, okay? Just kind of a note. And like I said, I could be wrong, because I didn't find any official information about who found the body. It just says employees or a maintenance worker. Okay. The main part of the Palmer house was cordoned off first thing in the morning, and the scene was worked well into Wednesday evening, with all questions being diverted to the police lieutenant Skip Arms, who refused to answer anything. He would not answer if there was security cameras. He wouldn't answer anything at all. And homicide detective Sergeant Rod Walker was working the case as well, but apparently he didn't answer anything either or respond to any pages for the entire night. Sergeant Michael Spoitzmiller, police spokesman, had said that the scene was too chaotic to tell exactly what happened. And I feel like that was just a blanket statement to just kind of brush off the media so that he didn't have to give out details. At first, law enforcement didn't release any details to the case at all, and they didn't answer any questions at all. It wasn't until the El Paso County coroner, David Bowerman, performed the autopsy on August 30th, or the next day, and finally said that Monique died by strangulation with contributing blunt force trauma. She's often just reported as just beaten. So, there's actually two there, strangulation and trauma. Then police Lieutenant Skiparm said the investigators found an undisclosed amount of cash that had been stolen from the hotel, and they suspected a robbery. And it's an idea that in 2003, LaSuer's mother agreed with and points out that a car driving south on Interstate 25 could see the Best Western from the highway and then take the Fillmore exit with a gas station right there. They could have robbed the hotel and gotten right back onto the interstate. Police Detective David Edmondson didn't discount these theories. He said, quote, "This is a real whodunit," he said. "It's been one dead end after another," unquote. So several potential suspects had been interviewed, but no major breakthroughs or leads ever come forward. Law enforcement talked with employees, hotel guests, and Monique's boyfriend, and then no arrests had ever been made from that. They requested anyone who tried to check in about 1:30 a.m. to 5 a.m. to contact them, and it was reported they had interviewed about 80 to 90 people. In general, there was an unease in the local hotel area because there was a lot of hotels around this one. And that unease actually was before and after this murder because the police had made no official statements about the safety of the area. And just a few weeks prior, or about 1 week maybe, a fugitive, Jesse James Hollywood, had stayed at one of the hotels. It was the Ramada, I believe. We'll have to check out my notes in a sec. I put a little asterisk here because I didn't want to overshadow Monique's story with the Jesse James thing, so we can talk about him below. But basically, a really bad dude was in the neighborhood less than a week prior to this. So, a local motel with 24-hour surveillance, bulletproof windows, this was the Motel 6, by the way, they were fearful after the death, and they had a quote, "We usually lock the doors at 10 p.m., said the general manager, Jody Henry. We may lock up earlier today," unquote. There's also a quote from Henry who says they live on site, but it is unclear what she means by on-site. I don't know if she lived in the area or lived at the hotel. Henry, who lives on site, said she had not been contacted by the police with the investigations on Wednesday. And she said, quote, "I've been in the business a long time, and police usually come by when stuff like this happens," Henry said. "Nobody has come by to let us know what's going on," unquote. So, grief counselors and a staff meeting were held at the Palmer Hotel, while the hotel operated as usual by Thursday. According to the hotel manager, Dick Sontag, he said the hotel didn't have a panic button or a camera anywhere but the front desk. After the murder, he hired a security guard, so the employees would feel more comfortable. Dick Sontag also said that the hotel locks the facility after the bar and restaurant closes, and they do have a telephone to call 911, but this is a this is the quote, "But this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. You can't stop some idiots from breaking in and robbing you," unquote. Dixon Tog went on to say that the hotel didn't keep a large amount of cash, as most customers paid with their credit cards. Okay, could you tell I had to rest my voice there for a second? And my tongue? Right, so the law enforcement had no leads, and Lieutenant Arms said that they did not develop a profile of the killer, and gave a quote saying, quote, "People always need to be aware of their surroundings," he said, "but not more than any other murder when we don't have someone in custody," unquote. Kind of a strange quote, I think. The wording is a little strange. And in September 21st of 2000, hang on just a okay, there we go. In September 21st of 2000, only 3 weeks after the murder, law enforcement declared they had a few leads and wanted more information about LaSuer's boyfriend. Law enforcement said, while there was cash missing from the hotel, they no longer think the murder was a robbery. Quote, "It's really a whodunit," unquote, from Sergeant Rod Walker, the homicide unit lead. He's the head lead. Quote, "There's a lot of dynamics here," unquote. They're now looking for information about anyone trying to get into the locked hotel at night, or who may have been in the area besides the hotel guests. Law enforcement then compared notes with detectives in Lakewood to see if there was any links between other motel robberies 2 days after LaSuer's death, but no links had actually been found. Investigators also wanted info from anybody that might have known LaSuer. And then that's pretty much a good chunk of the investigation right there. We don't hear anything again until 2002, when a billboard that was created by police, sheriff deputies, and families of victims of 4 unsolved victims of the area put Monique up on a billboard, which was on the corner of Platt Avenue and Shelton Road. And it was sponsored by MOMY, MOMY, Mothers of Murdered Youth. There was then some talk of reviving her case with this Democratic bill that would have abolished the state's death penalty and route the funds into cold case investigations, but that was in 2009. And then in 2014, law enforcement looked into a man named Dwayne Kelly Rogers, and he had confessed to killing women as a possible person of interest. But at the time of his sentencing, they found no connections between the cases. Quote, "I just wish the representatives knew these murderers are out there living in their neighborhoods," said Gail, Monique's mother. "Killing one person on death row is nothing if all of these other killers are out there," unquote. So that was just there so that I could tell you that Gail herself was working pretty hard to push that bill to try to route all the money into the cold cases. In conclusion, Monique's case is a homicide. It is open, but it's also considered a cold case. The CSPD considers a case cold if it's not solved within a year. The agency working on the case are the Colorado Springs Police Department in El Paso County. The agency case number is #0029340, and it's in the Judicial District of the 4th. So if you have any information, I'm going to urge you to contact this police department to make a tip. And if you want to be anonymous and you might possibly get a cash reward, you can call Crime Stoppers, of course. So, in 2006, Derek Graham, CSPD, he works cold case units, and so does Sergeant Sal Forillo, and at least 9 other detectives that work in this unit was looking into the case. Graham has a bookcase in his office and has a very large binder just for Monique LaSuer. And then in 2000 in general, 10 deaths were homicides, and by the time of Monique's death, that made her the 11th for the year. LaSuer's family had hoped that Monique's death would cause employers to think about providing more safety measures for their employees, because they were just, I think they were just sad, and, you know, when you work nights, there's not a lot of security, and they were kind of hoping that maybe some good could come from this and that it would be the norm to increase security. And then I'm going to end the case with a quick quote from Monique's neighbor, which is Betty Lewis, who lived at the duplex that she was renting. And she said, quote, "She seemed nice, always going to work. It's a terrible thing. I can't imagine why anyone would want to do that to her," unquote. And that, my friends, is the short case of Monique LaSuer. A very amazing woman, I should say, and unfortunately not very much talked about. So I hope us just covering this case can help her out a bit, help her case out, if at the very least just providing some solidarity to her family, that there are people out there that care about Monique LaSuer and care about the need for closure and justice for her. Thank you guys for bearing with me through this episode, as I had a lot of trouble speaking this time around. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the people who have been supporting me just because they want to. I appreciate the people that do not like the true crime, but they're like, hey, we're here for Merriweather, woohoo! I think that's so cool. And I appreciate the new people who seem to be rolling in and enjoying what I'm doing now. And I really like that. Thank you, guys. I hope to see you soon. I hope next time we can dig into some more cases, maybe some that are a little longer. And I'll talk to you guys later. Oh, I was going to say Mary out, my usual out. But then somebody told me that it was a missed opportunity if I didn't say that this is Mary and I'm going on my merry way or something like that. So this is Mary and I'm going on my merry way.